You walk into a room and you go towards certain people because they're vibrating at the same frequency as you are, and you stay away from other people. So somebody who's holding a lot of anger may actually find somebody else that's doing the same thing,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So that's what the law of attraction and all of that is accurate. There's also a lot of unconscious energy that we're not aware of. So using the same example of somebody that says, but I never get angry. Well, normally those are people that are repressing a lot of anger. Maybe when they grew up, they were taught that it's not okay to be angry.
Hey, everyone. Welcome to episode 138 of the Let's Start Healing podcast. We have more in common than we think, and what we have in common can change the world. As always, I'm hyped for you to meet my guest. My guest today is a Reiki healer living outside of Atlanta, Georgia. Her name is Mindy Strich, and we talk about energy healing. What in the world does energy mean? We discuss so many things. So many people out here in the world right now are wanting to live in their highest purpose. They want to figure out what their purpose is. And Mindy's work helps people to heal themselves. She helps people to get in touch with the blocks that they have within, and she will talk about that and share some about herself. Before we get to her, I want to invite you to subscribe to Let's Start Healing, like this episode. Send me an email at let's start healing podcast at gmail.com or follow me on social media. One thing that has been on my mind this last week when I mentioned purpose is we can't let anyone block or question what is what we know is for our highest good, what we know our purpose is. And I say that because I've been thinking about myself a little bit regarding this. I recently recorded this video of a conversation of A Course in Miracles, which I have been telling you about, and I'm really looking forward to bringing that to you. It was wonderful. And some of my close friends, or every once in a while, someone will do this, but it came up when I was talking to a close friend about this recording for A Course in Miracles discussions. And the question was, so what am I doing this for? And what's the point? And there's a lot of people who don't necessarily understand what you were doing or what I am doing, all of us collectively, what we're doing, in our lives when we decide that we're going to walk in our purpose. And it doesn't have to make sense to everyone. And I have experienced this a time or two or three over the last 30 years because my path has not been an orthodox path. My path has not been an orthodox path. I am a journalist and I didn't go to school for journalism. And I was told I couldn't be a journalist before I was hired where I was hired to do that work. I have been told what I can't do a number of times, or why are you doing that? And um, what does that mean again? And, just the looks, the questions. And when we don't do what is ordinary, when we do something extraordinary, when we don't do what is considered normal, then some folks are going to ask questions. And whoever is listening to this, I just hope that if that comes up for you, that you stay the course, because difficult times might arise along that path. There might be times that, you might naturally question yourself when that really is the path you're supposed to be on. And I think it's natural for internal questions to come up. But whatever decisions that you make, let it be your decision and not someone who is trying to um, write your book for you in terms of what you should be doing. And that's the way that I try to live my life. And there are ups and downs, but what I know is that I could not be in my purpose. I could not be in my purpose, because then I would feel like I'm dying. So just a little sharing right there. I want to get to Mindy. I really hope that you enjoy our conversation. I certainly did. I thought she dropped a lot of gems and insight. So let's meet her. Let's get started and let's start healing. Welcome, Mindy.
Thank you. I'm so excited to be here, Adrian. I've been looking forward to this for a while.
Me too. I'm very excited to have you on, and you do such essential work in my mind. I can't wait for us to get into it. And how would you? I think of you as a healer, and when we talked on the phone, you mentioned energy healing as kind of maybe being a catch-all phrase, and those are my words.
Hmm.
And I know that you do Reiki, and you had talked to me about your clients and how you really get to know them in an intuitive way. I thought you said, and before you actually start to do the energy work with them on the table. So can you share some of what your work looks like?
Sure. Yeah. I think when we were talking, I mentioned that Reiki was the catch all phrase. A lot of potential clients call me and ask me if I do Reiki. And as I explore what their goals are and what they're looking for, I realize oftentimes that they don't even know what Reiki is. It's just somebody said, hey, you should go have a Reiki session. And when I went to healing school, um, one of the things that I learned was that we all have to find our own way into the energy. So, for example, musicians could maybe hear the energy. Artists are very visual and can see it. We all have our own ways in. And what I've noticed about myself is the way in is to listen to people, to talk to them. So I became a certified life coach several years ago, um, and I'm not a therapist, but this energy healing is a form of therapy. And so what I have found is by talking with people and being present to what their needs are, and sometimes, well, not sometimes, all the time, I think we all just need to be listened to in a safer environment where people can feel heard and not judged. And I can read people's energy by doing that. I could sense where there's a chakra off or where there's an imbalance by, something that they're saying that. And we all have this ability, Adrian. I just have trained myself to learn a little bit deeper. Like we know when we're having a conversation with somebody, if something they said that just doesn't smell right or sound right. So what I like to do is talk to people first, and then they can get on the table and have the healing part of it. But it's all part of the healing, because if you're talking to somebody, like if I say something to you or you say something to me in this podcast that changes our perception of something, that's very healing for all of us. Wouldn't
Exactly.
you agree?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, what you're speaking to for me is connection. And I do feel like we're all connected. And
Exactly.
on the table, would you describe for people who don't know or are not familiar with Reiki? My experiences have been that the practitioner has their hands over me and they pick up energy in my body, but they also I've had experiences where they will tell me, they will say something intuitive, something that I haven't brought up. That one time I had someone bring up my mother and the connection that I had to my mother, and she brought my mother into the session, my late mother, I should say. into the session, and there was a communication going on that was phenomenal for me. So I know that practitioners have different approaches.
Yes, and every session and every client is different. So, using the combination of what I've learned when I went to healing school and taken a few different modalities of energy healing, using those techniques, and also sometimes not using them at all and just using my intuition. Without it sounding too woo woo, I think, at least for me, I would say that I'm a channel. I facilitate the movement of energy in a client's body. It actually takes three of us. It's the client, it's me, and it's that thing, whatever you want to call it, the universe, God, spirit. As I mentioned to you the other day, I've been calling it Gus after something that I read, and I love that because it's all encompassing. Gus stands for God, the universe, spirit. So you as the client, me as the healer, Gus as that third divine light, we all work together, and I can feel the energy. When I move my hands above people's body, and I think what people don't understand if they've never had a session is I'm still touching them. When I'm touching your energy field 3 to 4 feet away from your physical body, it doesn't feel like I'm touching your body, but I'm touching your energy body, and your energy body feels that. And energy moves. It could be emotional energy, it could be spiritual energy, it could be physical energy, it could be mental energy. It's usually a combination of all four. And sometimes I can't figure out the difference because it's all, it's all part of that energy system. But I might get a feeling of anxiety or sadness in my body, but I know when I'm doing a session with somebody that that's not my anxiety, it's theirs. And we
Right.
may talk about that. Yes, there are also times that I might feel the presence of a mother or a grandmother. Now, I've been a practitioner for 12 years, so I've changed things around a little bit. I don't like to talk to clients when we're doing that part of the healing session. I'll talk to them before and I'll talk to them after. But what I have found personally for me is that when we start to have a conversation, when you're on the table, then you go right into your head and you start thinking about what I'm saying. And that creates somewhat of a disconnect of the energy that wants to move. It keeps you in that mental state. And I want you to be as relaxed as possible, so you're not thinking, and you're breathing and you're meditating and you're staying present and you're going to another like a meditative state.
Yes.
So that way, it's sort of like when we sleep, our bodies can heal more,
Mhm.
because we tend to get in our own ways sometimes. So anything that I may feel or sense about the session, I'll take notes during the session, and then I'll leave 10 minutes or so at the end to talk about all of those things.
So one thing that I want to ask you that I've thought about for so many years, whether it's a psychologist or someone who's doing what you're doing, is there how do you deal with that energy not staying on you?
By
If you
me as the healer,
Yes.
yeah, thank you for asking that. And some of my clients, I love them because they're concerned about me. They're like, they'll tell me all these things, and we'll have this great session, and they'll say, oh, but I feel bad because now I dumped that all on you. No. First of all, that is something that I had to learn when I was a new healer. I don't want to take, I care about you and I want to help you heal, but I'm really there to support and facilitate the healing that you have to do. So after a session, I always go out and I clear myself, usually by using sage or Florida water or something to clear my field. Um, so that's a practice that I've gotten used to. And also, I think, like anything else, I think I've built up a muscle after 12 years of doing this work that I just don't feel like I pick up people's energy
Yeah.
as much anymore. We some people are more sensitive. Even clients, I tell them that they have to be very wary of picking up people's energy. And my doctor is a client, and you have to be wary of not picking up your patient's energy. But just like you have to build up your physical immune system to not get viruses, to not get sick by eating healthy and exercising and doing all those things that we know. The same is true about our energy immune system. So I keep myself in good shape, not only by eating and exercising and doing all those things, but making sure that I clear myself of of my clients' energy after every session.
Yeah. And so I know what energy is because I'm an empath and I used to take on other people's energy a lot. And I've had to learn what that entails and how to control that. And basically what you just described. Some people um, don't know. I'm thinking of somebody very close to me says all the time, well, what is energy? I hear that all the time as if it's a cliche, but it's a really real thing. And the best way that I can describe it, and so I'd like for you to describe it, is to call it a vibration. But I don't know if that's accurate or not. How would you describe it?
That's a great question. Nobody's ever asked me that before, and I don't even know that. I'm gonna say it off the top of my head because I've not really thought about it. But I think it was Albert Einstein that said that everything is energy.
It is.
And that's true. It is. I mean, we are all part of this big cosmic pool of energy, but everything vibrates at a different frequency. Physical energies vibrate differently than emotional energies and mental energies, and the energies that make up the stars and the the planets and the universe and the plants. It's we're all made up of the same stuff. We just vibrate at different vibrations and frequencies. So when you think, so even now there's nothing separating us. We think that there's something separating us, but there isn't anything separating us. And so oftentimes what contributes to a lot of the challenges, physical or emotional challenges that we have in our lives, is an imbalance of energy. So, if you're walking around angry all the time, that's a lower vibration than if you're walking around happy all the time. And when you're walking around happy all the time, people are going to be more attracted to you that way. You don't
Yes.
even have to do anything, but there's something when you walk into a room and you go towards certain people because they're vibrating at the same frequency as you are, and you stay away from other people. So somebody who's holding a lot of anger may actually find somebody else that's doing the same thing,
Yeah. Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So that's what the law of attraction and all of that is accurate. But there's also a lot of unconscious energy that we're not aware of. So using the same example of somebody that says, "But I never get angry." Well, normally those are people that are repressing a lot of anger. Maybe when they grew up, they were taught that it's not okay to be angry, right? Or they got punished and they weren't able to express that emotion. That doesn't mean that they're not holding a lot of anger inside of them, but they are.
Yeah, and that's something that has me curious because I know that um, hate or anger cannot sustain itself, but then there are people who can carry that for long periods of time. I know that that is exhausting, that it's weighty, but I'm also fascinated by how long someone can carry that. And I'm speaking as someone that I can't carry that for a long time. And it just seems as a human, you can only carry it for so long, but some people can carry that for decades.
And I would be curious, I will never say that somebody who is carrying a lot of anger is responsible for the physical implications that that anger will manifest
Yeah,
in their
I'm not
lives.
saying that.
But
Yeah.
I do believe that it will contribute to it.
Yeah. But I'm just speaking to that person, the person who is carrying that. It has me fascinated. And I'm not thinking about anybody in particular, but it has me fascinated that some people can carry that for a long time. I was actually just looking at somebody on the news, and I won't say anything about them, but they were talking about this very thing, how they basically, it was their children that shifted them out of their anger, but they basically were saying that it was exhausting to carry.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And people don't realize, when I was married, I remember, and this was before I knew anything about energy healing. I remember, because I grew up in New York, and I grew up in a family where yelling was very normal. That's just the way my parents talked. So if I wanted to be heard or seen, I had to talk louder, right? My ex-husband, very different. There was no yelling. You just did not yell. So when we got married and I would yell, he would walk out of the room, and that would make me even angrier. And I remember him saying to me, it's not what you say, it's how you say it. And at the time I said to him, but I don't know how to do it any differently. Well, what I know now, Adrian, is that wasn't true. I've learned how to do it differently. And that's why I think people carry anger or victimization, or, you name the emotion, because it's how we were conditioned and we got imprinted, and that's how we do it. So if you meet somebody that does it differently, it seems very foreign to you. Like, how do they do that? But they think the way that you do it is, you know, just as foreign. And I think that's why we tend to meet, they say opposites attract. I think that it's not that we're that different, it's that we just have been taught to handle and process our emotions differently. And if we're in a conscious enough relationship, whether it's with a friend or a spouse or whatever, we could learn from each other how to do it differently. And that's one of the things that I'm really grateful about, um, with my ex-husband, is I learned how to communicate differently and how not to carry that anger, because it's so often what we, and without getting into the news and politics, it's the perfect place to look at all of the anger and the blame of everybody else. We
Right.
want to blame other people instead of looking within ourselves to say, okay, what's my responsibility here? Because one of the things I tell my clients all the time, and I heartfully believe that this is true, is somebody could trigger you and do something, but their behavior may not be kind or nice or respectful, but it's not about that. It's not about them. If you're healing, it's what are they triggering inside of you, your emotion, that wants to be healed and shifted and changed. We can't keep saying, even if you are in a job or a relationship that is, not healthy, we have to stop looking at them to heal us and make us feel better. So it's whatever we're feeling that we need to shift. And that's the biggest part of healing from my perspective, is going in and not going out.
Absolutely. And to your point, I find that if I have a day where I am doing my spiritual practice, which includes meditation and prayer, and if it's a really good morning, exercise, and if I'm doing all of that, then on that day, if something is coming at me, then my energy is at a higher level. My vibration is at a higher level. And I'm really not as phased by it as if I haven't done those things, then I'm at a lower level and I am triggered easily. I'm reacting instantly rather than, watching and observing, like, oh, okay, this is what's going on, like slowing it down.
Yeah, absolutely. And when you do make the effort, and it does take practice, just like exercise. I can't go to the gym today and come back tomorrow and have lost 10 pounds. You have to create a practice, and you have to make it part of your life. And the same exact thing is true if you're trying to change something within yourself. So it was not easy for me to learn how to stop being angry. And I don't mean to say that I don't get angry. I do, but I don't react as fast anymore. And that's when you become somebody for 40 or 50 years who that is your default, changing it to something else is not easy, but it is simple. You just have to practice it. And what happens, to your point, is when you finally reach that tipping point, you feel so much better. Your relationships change. You have more energy. It's like you finally have let go of it. It is like losing weight. It's this baggage that we've been carrying for our whole lives. And instead of listening to it, because that's the other thing, that I might be a little different as a healer than some people. I don't look at, we're talking about anger, so I'll just keep using that as an example. I don't look at anger as a bad thing or a negative emotion. I don't think that we have negative or bad emotions. I think we have emotions that vibrate at different frequencies. But, Gus wouldn't have given us all of these emotions and feelings if they didn't serve a purpose. You don't get angry at a baby who is angry. They're trying to communicate that there's something wrong. And what do we do as parents? We realize, oh, they're trying to communicate that they're hungry, or they need to be cuddled, or they're sad, or
Yeah.
whatever. We need to love all of our emotions and become present to what is that anger telling me. So if I were to look back now at, some of the things when I was married, and if I would have known then what I know now, I would have been able to communicate to my husband, you know, I don't feel like you're hearing me. I don't feel like I don't feel like I'm being heard. And if I've learned how to express those things now, and it's changed all my relationships as a result of it, instead of just reacting with anger. Because what does that do? That just makes people defensive, and they either retreat or they attack,
Yes.
right?
Yes. Yeah. And
Instead of us listening and becoming vulnerable and sharing. Sometimes people don't even realize what they're really feeling. It takes a lot of vulnerability to get there.
I so agree. And something that keeps coming up for me about this is the saying about how people remember how you make them feel. And I
Right.
know that it's not the other person's responsibility to make me feel a certain way, but I will remember, or they will remember how they felt more than they remember what I said. And that's a real thing, because sometimes I know I might say something and I'm being really clear, but I'll later understand that it's how that person was feeling rather than what I was saying.
And to your point before about, what is energy, frequency, vibration, it's the tone of what we're saying.
Yes.
It's the vibration of what
Yes.
we're saying, right? So if you're talking to somebody and you're angry about something, you have to still, you could say, I'm really angry about the fact that you didn't call me back yesterday and I was waiting for you to call. And that really hurt me and I wanted to talk to you about it. That's very different than saying, I'm really angry that you didn't call me back yesterday. I was waiting for you. I was just rude. I mean, those are two very different
Oh,
conversations with two
absolutely.
very different results.
Absolutely. And something else that I'm thinking about is animals, because I love animals. I have a dog. And sometimes I think about, like, if I accidentally step on my dog's foot, then and my dog like yells out like, "Ow," the sound that, he'll make. And
Right.
then I'm instantly saying, "Oh, I'm so sorry." Before I can even say I'm so sorry, he's just with me. Like, he knows that I didn't mean it. And I know that's by the energy that he's getting from me, the energy that we have, versus it could be another situation with a dog and a person, and that dog might retreat, like they think they're going to be harmed even more. And to me, that is energy also.
Yeah, well, and animals are a perfect example of this too because they don't understand our language. They just
Exactly.
understand our tone. So you say, "I'm so sorry, sweetie," and they wag their tails, and it's okay, right? But when you yell at an animal, they get scared, right? They're just going completely. I mean, if you yelled at a dog and said, "I love you," they're going to be afraid.
That's so true. That's so true. So let me ask you this. Is there a common theme or themes that come up with your clients now, 2024, late 2023, versus before the pandemic? Is there something that you're picking up in terms of what people are coping with? That's a common thread.
I don't really see a difference pre-pandemic or post-pandemic with my clients. Um, maybe if I were to think about it, there seems to be more of a sense of urgency um, to get it right. Um, I think people are shifting faster.
Mm,
I think there, was a wake up call, and people. I mean, think about the way um, we're working now, right? Like a lot of people after the pandemic decided, I'm not working 50 or 60 hours a week. I want, me too. I want a different quality of life. I want to enjoy myself, right? Higher vibration, healthier, more balance, work life balance. People seem to be really more in tune to self care.
right.
I
Right.
would say that's the one thing that I've noticed, and
Right.
that's good.
Yeah. That
Yeah,
people became more aware of what's important to them.
yeah, and they're more open to healing.
Yes.
Um, but I don't know if this. Well, I don't believe in coincidences, but before the pandemic, most, if not all, of my clients came from referrals And I did a lot of workshops, and I would do healing circles in different places around Atlanta. So that's how I got most of my clients. Post pandemic, I get at least 2 to 3 people, sometimes 2 to 3 people a week, sometimes a little bit more a month, that find me on Google. In the 12 years that I've been a practitioner, pre-pandemic, nobody found me on Google. Nothing changed.
Yeah. Life
But
changed.
more people are out there looking for Reiki, looking for energy healing.
Yes, life change. I mean, I've always been spiritual, period, and had spiritual practices that are similar before the pandemic, as they are now. But my life has changed. I'm not the same as I was before the pandemic. And I know that's so true for many, many people.
Yeah, it was a wake-up call.
Can you share how you got into this work? You said 12 years ago.
Ugh, how much time do you have, Adrian? you know, I, I don't think that I got into it. I think I didn't, it found me. I've always been a spiritual seeker. Well, not always. My mother died on my 25th birthday. And that set something off, because that 25-year-old young woman couldn't grasp how it was unexpected that she passed. Couldn't grasp that my mother would die on my birthday. I felt like I would never enjoy my birthday again. I didn't want to celebrate it. Nothing. I don't feel that way now. Now it's completely different. I am completely honored at the connection. I once had a friend that said to me, "Your mother gave birth to you twice, on the day you were born and on the day that she died." And that is so absolutely true. I get chills just saying that.
That's
But
beautiful.
that was the catalyst of me starting to look into spiritual things. I started to read books about angels and the law of attraction and near death experiences, and and one breadcrumb led to another. Um, but I also had chronic heart issues that doctors could never diagnose, and it started when my mother got sick. Um, and I went for all kinds of tests, and for 30 years, I never found a doctor that accurately diagnosed it. So everything sort of came together in 2010, when I wound up in the hospital with another episode. Basically, I couldn't stand up and I would get very dizzy. And doctors, after 3 days of tests, didn't find anything there and sent me home. And I had it. And a friend of mine said, "I'm going to take you to a healing circle." And I said, "Well, what's a healing circle?" And she took me to a healing circle, and where I met the person who became my teacher, my mentor, my friend. But my intention then was I needed to find out what was going wrong in my physical body, because doctors weren't figuring it out. And at a deeper level, I knew it was something emotional. Can't really explain it. It was just a feeling, but I knew that there was something that's why the doctors weren't able to find it out. So within a 3-month period, I signed up, because when I went to this healing circle, again, it had nothing to do with something that was in my head. I was watching people come up, and they would say, "I have irritable bowel syndrome. I'm in a relationship that I know I have to get out of, and it's making me sick, but I don't know how to." And he would do hands-on healing. He was doing what I learned, integrative energetic medicine. And my head wanted to say, "What is he doing?" Like, my head said, "This is crazy. Like, none of this makes sense." But my heart said, "I believe him. I trust him. He's the real deal. So I signed up for a course in energy healing medicine with Dr. Fernand Poulin at the White Winds Institute, but it had nothing to do, at least on a conscious level, for me wanting to be a healer. I needed to find out what was going on with me. A week after I signed up and started this, what wound up being a 2-year course, my husband at the time came home and told me he was gay. And of course, that ended my marriage. So everything sort of fell apart and came together at the same time. Because I could tell you now that I know that that was why 6 months before I ended up in the hospital. Because my body, my heart didn't want to see what I knew at a deeper level. And that started 30 years before, when the same thing was happening with my mother.
Really?
I had some level, well, she wasn't gay, but I knew she was really sick. So diagnosis, what was going on in my body was fear of abandonment. Because from the time I was a little girl, even before I knew it, people in my life started leaving me, usually because of death. They died young in my family. So my field, my consciousness, because everything gets recorded in our energy field. When I saw my mother getting sick, I started to get scared that this was going to happen again. And it's a buildup. It's cumulative. 30 years later, with my ex-husband, the same thing happened. So I do have a diagnosis now, but I know beyond that, which is POTS, but beyond that diagnosis, I've had to heal my fear of abandonment. And I have. And the symptoms have gotten much better. So somewhere along the line in my course with the White Winds Institute, of me going there to heal myself, I got divorced, and I thought, and this was a knowing, this was not a knowing, this was a knowing, oh my God, I'm supposed to become a healer.
Now, would you share one? I'd like for you to say what POTS is, but then also, so many of us, I think, have a fear of abandonment and have trauma around that, but it may look different for each of us. Is there anything you can share about your approach for you of healing that wound?
I think whatever our wounds are, that are most of the time connected to some sort of fear, the answer, so I'll tell you a little story. My friends know that one of my mantras is go towards the roar. So if you don't know, when lions hunt, they hunt in tandem. Now, I've heard different things. I've heard it's the male and the female, or I've heard that it's the older male and the younger male, whichever it is. The older, stronger lion that has this big roar stands out in the brush where it could be seen, because it looks really scary and it sounds really scary. But it's not, because it's older and it's not as strong as the younger, virile lion. That one hides where it can't be seen. And so when the gazelles or whichever the prey are coming through the forest, and they see this big lion, and the lion roars really loud, what do? They run away. What do we, and then they run into the jaws of the more virile, stronger lion, and that's how they hunt and they get their prey. What do we do when we are scared of something? So in my case, abandonment, because even before I knew it, like I was 4 years old when my grandmother died. I don't really remember it, but I'm sure at some level I saw my mother get upset. I saw,
Yeah.
I started to be afraid of people are going to leave me. People, everybody's going to be sad and depressed. And so we run away from those things. We stay attached. I need this person to stay with me, because if they don't stay with me, I'm not going to be okay. Well, we have to go towards the roar. We have to go towards our fear. So I believe that part of me becoming a healer, and part of me healing a lot of my physical symptoms, was I had to learn how to live alone. I had to know that I was going to be okay. I had to teach myself those things. And I have. Because 99% of the time, the things that we're afraid of are illusions. Our bodies don't know the difference between real fear and fake fear. And that's one of the symptoms of POTS, is that it triggers the sympathetic nervous system, which puts us into fight or flight. So I would be running to the ERs all the time because I felt like I was having a heart attack, and they would do all these tests and everything would come back normal. And they wanted me to go to a psychiatrist because they thought that I was making it up, that I was having these panic attacks. Well, I was having panic attacks, but it wasn't something that I was doing psychologically. My body was doing it because it thought that there was something wrong. So I had to teach myself that there was nothing wrong.
And what does POTS, what's the acronym? Is that an acronym?
Postural orthostatic tachycardia syndrome.
Wow. Wow. Yeah.
And it's becoming a more diagnosed thing ever since the pandemic. I actually am getting some clients that, look, sometimes I have to say, look, I'm a fan of Western medicine. I believe in doctors, and I'm so grateful for them. But when it comes to chronic syndromes, where you can't look into somebody's body and say, oh, you have POTS, I think we diagnose things that just because, if it looks like a duck and it quacks like a duck, it must be a duck, but
Yeah.
it mustn't always be a duck. So I don't always necessarily, because I went through this for 30 years of doctors giving me diagnoses that were not correct.
Yeah.
So I believe that I have POTS because I have a lot of the symptoms, and after process of elimination, it seems to be a diagnosis. But now what I was saying is, now that after the pandemic, with people having all these strange things going on that doctors can't figure out, a lot of them are just throwing the POTS diagnosis at
Yeah.
people.
Yeah. I love this. I'm so fascinated with this because um, heart issues run in my family on both sides. And my mom had she had an enlarged heart and an irregular beat. And her therapist told her exactly what you just said, that because she was a worrier, she would worry about me. Am I okay? Am I safe? And her therapist told her exactly that her body doesn't know the difference. Doesn't know the difference. And I always say that I have my mother's heart. I don't have heart issues, but I always say that I have my mother's heart in terms of like the love and the sentimentality. But I always think about, not that I don't worry, I could worry, but when I go into that worry mode, I think about her and what I know, when I know logically. And it's a fascinating thing. I think the heart is just an amazing muscle and organ.
Yeah, well, a couple of things. First of all, we don't only inherit our family's genetics, we inherit their energy too. So when you say you have your mother's heart, there's a lot of truth to that.
Right.
Um, POTS is not really a heart issue, though. It's a blood volume circulatory issue. Like I don't have enough blood oxygen, which makes my heart have to work harder sometimes, right? But it's really
Exactly.
more circulatory and volume,
Right.
um, blood volume, which affects the heart.
Right.
So, and as I said before, I think that all of our physical ailments, whether they're minor or major, I have a relative going through pancreatic cancer right now. And of course, that's a very serious physical issue. And she's chosen to go the conventional way with chemotherapy and other treatments that she's doing. And if that's what's right for her, then that's what she needs to do, because there are times where Western medicine works. But I also believe that we kind of throw the baby out with the bathwater. And I'm not a medical professional. I always look at this just from the energy, like, what else is contributing to the energy that is creating this issue in our bodies? And no doctor is ever going to convince me that anything is just physical.
Yeah. I mean, I'm a believer that it's all. I know we can come into this form with medical, physical issues, but then that's a spiritual thing to me too. And I mean, this is just my personal view, and I absolutely believe that our our medical illnesses arise from our emotional issues and thoughts. I that's
And if you are, if you're in utero, couldn't think of the term, you're not born yet, right? You're picking up your mother's energy, as I mentioned
yeah,
before. So
yeah.
if your mother is worried or um, in an abusive relationship, or doesn't want the baby, or they're carrying a lot of negative energy, you're coming out with some issues.
That's exactly what a Reiki healer told me, who I was having a session with, because my mom, as I said, she was a worrier, and she lost her first child at 7 when she was 7 months pregnant. And the healer said that at that point in time, when she would get to 7 months in her pregnancies with me and my brothers, that's when she would start worrying. And I
Sure.
absolutely took on her stuff in terms of, I was her protector. When she got older, if you could not mess with my mother and not deal with me, because
Hmm.
I took on all her stuff. And
Hmm.
so it was, but that's exactly what our healer said to me, what you just said.
So you're saying you took on all of her stuff. Have you let go of?
It's been, yes, a lot of it I have. And it's been a process. Even when she passed, I was so used to protecting her. I had to get used to the fact that I don't have to protect her anymore, because she was a senior citizen when she passed. So, I'm protecting my mom. And so listen, that I don't have to have that frame of mind anymore. And I had to get used to, I don't have anybody to protect at this point. So, but yeah, it's been a process.
Yeah, and it is, as I said, it's simple, but it's not easy, because if you have that personality trait to be a worrier, when you don't have anybody to worry anymore, well, that's the opportunity, right? Well, what do you want to fill that space up with? Because it's very easy for you to attract somebody else to worry about.
And you're right,
But
right,
yeah,
right,
but
right.
you have to be very aware of, okay, now what do I want to replace that worry with? And that's what gets hard, because you have to build a whole new muscle. You have to retrain your brain and create new neural pathways. And it is a process because you're everything that you've been wants to go back to. It's like, it's like an alcoholic. We're addicted to our thoughts and our emotions. So you want to go back to, I need somebody to worry about, just like I want that cigarette if I'm quitting smoking, right? But
Yeah.
you have to sober up and put something else in there. And it's not easy because your body still incorrectly is in tune to feeling like that worry is going to keep you safe.
Yeah. And for me, I think it's my mind, because my mind will go to, is that person okay?
Right.
But the other thing is that I do know and remember vividly what it was like to be on the other side of that, which was a lot. So that's not all of my nature. Like her nature wasn't 100% of my nature, because I was on the other side of that. I would experience ridiculous things as a result of her worrying.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Me too. My actually, we have that in common. My mother had a miscarriage, and um, when I was 6 years old, she had another baby who passed at 6 weeks old. So she became incredibly overprotective of me because I was the oldest child and I was a girl. So she didn't want me to do anything. She would have been happy if she could have kept me home in my bedroom the whole time so she could keep me safe, because she used to say, better you should cry than I should cry.
I completely get that. Well, let me ask you this last question, and I also would like for you to share how people can reach you. But I want to know when you most feel your the universe, your higher power. For me, that would be God. When do you most feel that spirit, and you're really resonating, and you feel like you're engaging at a high level, high beautiful level?
Yeah, another great question. When do I not feel it? I mean, after doing my own personal journey through this and being a healer, I certainly feel it every single day when I'm working with clients. I have to. It's always there, and it's such a gift and a reward and a responsibility that I do not take lightly.
Mhm.
I've had some pretty miraculous things happen, and clients that have left in joyful tears because of the connection that they feel, um, oftentimes. So certainly at work, more specifically, I get signs on a daily basis. That we could have a whole other podcast conversation of the signs that I get. I wrote a chapter in a book called Faith about a dream I once had, about a phone booth where you can call heaven, and it actually became a book years later. But I remember in my dream putting a dime in the phone booth and being able to talk to my mother. And right after that, I started seeing dimes in crazy places. And so that's just one sign, but if people that know me are blown away at the places that I find dimes, that it's not just like looking down in the parking lot and there's a dime. So there's specific numbers that, again, it's not random. Or people often say, I turn on the radio and there's a certain song playing. All of those things happen to me. And anytime I just get some sort of like goosebump, which is often on a daily basis, I know that God and the universe is with me.
Yeah.
And I've had some pretty amazing experiences that make me believe that, you know, it's true. It's a different way of seeing. It's like we have to go beyond our minds. Again, Albert Einstein, I don't remember the quote, but he said something to the effect of, our intellect is limited, our imagination is unlimited. And so it's okay if people don't want to believe the things that I believe. I just know that they're true for me. And of course, God is going to communicate differently. Because for me, part of that definition of God is that is a higher vibration. If I want to be connected to that, I've got to raise myself up to that vibration and believe in something that my two eyes can't see. I have to think beyond that. I have to believe beyond that. And so I don't know if that answered your question, but that's my
No,
answer.
it does. And I so appreciate this conversation. It's what you've shared has been beautiful. I just love it and really thank you for it. And well, before we close, how can people reach you? What's the best way?
Yeah, I wish I got to the point where I could say just telepathically, since we're having a spiritual conversation, just hit me up. One day, wouldn't that be great?
Yes.
But for now, you can go to my website, which is www.mindystrich.com, and it's MindyStrich.com. Or you can call me. My number is 678-642-7771. You could leave me a text or call me. I'm happy to chat with anybody, answer any questions you may have, talk to you more about, what I do and how I could help. I would love it.
Well, I certainly hope that we can do this again because there's a lot of things I would love to talk to you about. As you were just talking at the end, there's a multitude of things that we can talk about that I know people would enjoy. So I hope you come back.
I would love it anytime, Adrienne. It would be my pleasure. This has been a lot of fun.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for joining us. I want to remind you to subscribe to Let's Start Healing. You can listen to all episodes wherever you get your podcasts. That includes YouTube, Apple, Spotify, iHeartRadio. Let me know what you think of the episode. And until next time, let's start healing.